Hello, good morning. I'm in Italy. Look at this view. Like, stunning. Another dream come true. Really hard to believe that I'm here. Hey there, welcome to my channel. Today I am decked out in full cowgirl rhinestone aesthetic because this was what I wore to work today, and then was like, yeah, sure, I'll film a video in this as well. Peep the boots. Can we have a moment for the boots, please? Thank you. Anyway, my name is Caitlin, and if you are new here, welcome, because I'm new here too. This is my second video for this channel, and if you have not seen my previous video talking about my trip to Ireland, this channel is going to be dedicated to all of the different trips that I take. However, it is motivated primarily by the fact that I currently have a 10-year travel goal that I am trying to achieve. So in the next 10 years, the entirety of my 30s, I want to visit one new country every single year, so that by the time I turn 40, I can say that I have visited 10 new different countries. And I have been on track so far, even though I'm still young. I'm 31. My 32nd birthday's in 1 month. And today I wanted to share the travel vlog for the second country that I visited. So earlier this year in April of 2024, I decided to take a wonderful, magical journey to Italy. Italy was very high on my travel bucket list in terms of places that I wanted to see. I did a lot on this trip, and yet there's still so much more to explore. So I know I will definitely be doing an Italy part 2 trip at some point in my life. But today I am going to cover what I did for part 1. So I went with my cousin on a 10-day trip through the northern half of Italy, and we were staying in 3 major cities: Rome, Venice, and Florence. Unlike when we traveled through Ireland, we did not rent a car this time. We were doing everything by public transit or just walking by foot. Truth be told, I was not a very big fan of driving in Ireland. I was pretty stressed. So luckily, I didn't have to stress about that this time, and instead I could just let a train conductor whisk me through the Italian countryside while I ate snacks. So our first stop on this Italian adventure was Rome. And if there's one thing I could use to describe Rome, I would say that it reminded me a lot of New York City. It had this fast-paced, hustle and bustle, metropolitan city type of feel to it, which I really enjoyed personally. But what was really fascinating about it was the fact that even though it felt like New York City in terms of like a modern city rushing about, it's an ancient city, actually, thousands of years old. And you know that, undeniable proof that it's an ancient city, because there are ancient ruins just excavated around the whole city. Like, we would just be walking down the street and then suddenly you just look to your left and you're like, what's that down below? Oh, it's an entire ancient Roman village that's just been extricated and is still mostly intact. That's cool. So our first day in Rome, we did not have anything concrete planned, mostly because we had just come off of an overnight flight. I didn't sleep again, and we just wanted to kind of get our bearings and just kind of see what was around. And we ended up doing most of the major tourist sightseeing that people want to do in Rome. We saw the Trevi fountain. We also saw the Pantheon, which I keep wanting to call the Parthenon, and I'm totally mixing up my Greek and Roman ancient structures, so forgive me on that. We also saw the Spanish Steps. There was a lot of places, admittedly, that were inspired from the Lizzie McGuire movie as like, oh yeah, you got to check out that spot. But in truth, it was also just really neat to get to see all of these different popular spots throughout Rome. And they were all within walking distance of each other too. I think that was the really neat thing, was realizing how close everything is in Rome, because it feels like there's so much to see and you just expect that it's going to be like miles and miles of walking to get from one major site to another. But in all truth, we were really able to make it to different destinations within like a 15 to 20 minute walk, depending on where we were in the city. So that was really fun. And of course, that first night I was very excited for, because we had our first authentic Italian meal. So normally when I travel, food is just kind of an afterthought for me. Like, I'm so busy trying to see as much as I can, get out there, explore everything before daylight ends. However, this trip was one where I knew food had to be a component to it, because it's just so well known for its food. And so that first night was my first night ever having real authentic Italian pasta, and I was in love. It was everything I could have hoped it would be, and then some. And let me tell you, I ate a lot of pasta over this 10-day Italy trip, and I regret nothing. So our second day in Rome was a very big, busy day, because we went to the Vatican. And a big major tip I have for anyone who wants to go and tour the Vatican museums: buy your tickets ahead of time before you go on your trip. This is so important because you get a timed entry. And we had done this. We booked pretty much all the major stuff we were going to do before we left the US. And then I looked and I saw this line that just wrapped down the street and around the corner of the Vatican museums. And that was all people who were trying to buy tickets to enter the museum right then and there. So definitely look into getting tickets ahead of time for the Vatican, because everyone wants to go to the Vatican. And for good reason, because I had never been so blown away by artwork in my life. I'm not someone who's usually like extremely passionate about art. I'm not someone who's really going and seeking out art museums in my regular everyday life. But the art that's housed inside the Vatican is extraordinary. And it's a mix of both Italian and Greek sculptures, as well as paintings. There was Egyptian artwork as well. And it's basically like a guided pathway so that you see everything there is to see within the Vatican. And then the final culmination is getting to go into the Sistine Chapel. That took my breath away. There have been many times in my life when I've traveled somewhere and I get to the top of a mountain and I have this beautiful landscape to overlook, and that takes my breath away. But being inside the Sistine Chapel was one of those moments for me where all I could do was just stand there, just neck completely craned back, and just stare at the ceiling of all of this incredible Michelangelo artwork. There's nothing else like it. It's a must-see in my book. And once we were done touring the Vatican museums, we then made our way down to St. Peter's Basilica. Now, it's free to enter the Basilica. However, you do have to wait in a line that wraps down around the whole plaza. Luckily, they are pretty quick at getting everyone through the lines, but just be prepared to wait a while to get in there because, of course, this is another very popular spot. But once we got inside, it was beautiful inside. I had never been in a church quite like this one before. I had never been in a church that large, and I'd never been in one that had so much beautiful, ornate detail and artwork. Like it was just like when I was in the Sistine Chapel, where I'm just standing there with my neck craned all the way back, just looking at everything up above me and these incredibly high arched ceilings, and absolutely, I will say it again, incredible. Now, a really fun thing that you can do at the Basilica is you can climb the dome. Now, this you do have to pay for, and you get two different options. So you can either choose to take an elevator like halfway up and then climb the rest of the stairs up to the top. Or for a cheaper price, you can just climb all the stairs starting from the ground floor all the way to the top. Do not do the second option. Just pay the little bit of extra money it is to take the elevator halfway up. Because as someone who gets really overambitious about anything where I'm going to be climbing, I was thinking like, oh, this isn't a big deal. I'm sure I could handle all these stairs, but just in case, because going downstairs is a little harder for me sometimes, I'll just pay for the elevator ticket and I'm sure it'll be fine. So in the research that I'm double checking, because I knew the number when I was in Italy, but I have since forgotten, there are a total of 551 steps. And if you take an elevator, you can skip the first 231, but you still need to climb the final 320 steps, which might not seem like a lot. However, it is, because you're just climbing this like winding staircase. And then at one point, because you're like in the dome and the dome is arched, like everything arches with it. And it almost feels like a fun house moment. It's very weird, very strange, but you get these incredible views of all of Rome down below. And that was definitely the coolest part. So I will climb a basilica, a bell tower, whatever it is, to get a good view any day of the week. So that was very neat. Highly recommend if you are capable of climbing stairs, because the views at the top are great. And then our third and final day in Rome was more of like a half day, because we were going to be taking a train to our next stop, but we did have the morning open. And so that was when we went to tour the Colosseum. And the Colosseum was number one on my list of places that I wanted to see in Italy. So I was very excited. We booked a tour beforehand, which I feel like is the right way to go, because they get you access into further points within the whole Colosseum area. Like you get to tour the Roman Forum as well. And you get all of this really great history, because obviously the structure is 2,000 years old. There's a lot that's happened there. And it was really neat, because at one point I was just standing in the Roman Forum and our guide pointed to a specific spot and he said, and this is where Julius Caesar had his funeral. And I was like, what? Julius Caesar was here exactly where I am standing? History just blows me away. And we got into the Colosseum, and what was really neat was our tour ticket included access to the main level of the Colosseum through the gladiators entrance. So most other people, if they're going to buy a general ticket to see the Colosseum, they enter up above. So you're at one of the higher points. And you can't get down onto that main area unless you pay more. And I think it's just easier. I think it's mostly the guided tours that let you in through the gladiators entrance, and then they take you up to that higher spot to see more. And it was really, really neat. This is one of the 7 wonders of the world for a reason. And I was so excited that I got to see it with my own 2 eyes. So if you also want to go and see the Colosseum, I definitely recommend booking the tour. It's just very efficient. They get you into all of the important places. They give you the context as well, which was really important, because I feel like if we didn't have a guided tour, we would just be looking at all of this ancient stuff and be like, these rocks are cool, but what do they mean? So the tour was very, very helpful. So definitely recommend it. And before we knew it, it was time to say farewell to our lovely Rome and head on to our next stop on this trip, which was Venice. So we made it to Venice, and upon checking in to our hotel, my cousin and I were greeted in true romantic Venetian style. It was a beautiful suite that we had, and I think they thought that this was our honeymoon, but alas, it was just two straight cousins going on a romantic trip together because we're worth it. And when I say that this is a romantic city, I mean this was the most romantic city I've ever been to. I don't think anyone else does it like Venice, truly. We did all types of romantic activities together, me and my cousin. We took a gondola ride because when you're in Venice, why would you not take a gondola ride? It's just the classic tourist thing to do, and it was kind of funny because we got on there and we were just sitting in like the sweetheart seat. It was a lovely time, okay? I recommend everyone take their cousin to Venice with them. Also, I learned some really cool facts about the gondoliers because, again, this was more of a tour that we booked. So as they're walking you from the meeting point to the canal where the gondolas are, you are receiving information about the history of the gondolas in Venice and their whole purpose. And needless to say, it was very interesting. Gondoliers in present day do not sing. So if you are expecting to get a romantic gondola ride with a gondolier who just sings in a beautiful operatic voice to you, that's most likely not going to happen. Maybe if you tip them, they will. Apparently, this was a practice that was done way back in the day when the gondolas were used for like legit travel throughout the town by businessmen, because they would be discussing important, rich, wealthy businessman topics. And in order to not be heard by other people outside of the gondola, the gondolier would sing as a way to mask the conversation so no one else could hear what was being said inside. And the gondoliers wear striped shirts, and they are either going to be navy blue striped or red striped. And that originally signified what side of the canal you were working from. I believe nowadays they can pick which color they prefer. I don't think it has as deep of a meaning, but that was at least where it originated from. And you can't just become a gondolier. You have to be trained by someone in your family or someone who is a friend, someone you know specifically. The gondolier career has to be passed down through lineage. So there you go. There's your fun facts about gondoliers for the day. Another site that we spent quite a bit of time in Venice was St. Mark's Square. And there's quite a bit to do around here. There's Doge's Palace, as well as the Bell Tower and St. Mark's Cathedral. Now, a thing that is very important to keep in mind if you want to go and tour the St. Mark's Cathedral is the dress code. You definitely want to make sure that you have your shoulders covered, you don't have cleavage showing, and you also cannot show your knees. My cousin and I thought we were going to be fine when we got in line to see the St. Mark's Cathedral originally, and we got up to the front of the line, and there's a person at the front there who checks everyone's outfits before admitting them into the church. And he looked at us and he said, "Nope, that skirt is too short. You can't come in." And granted, it's not like we were wearing mini skirts. I think my cousin had a dress or a skirt on that was like 3 inches above the knee, and that was too much. Like, it has to be like at your knees or longer. And so we were kicked out of line, and we had to go back another day in different clothes to make sure that they would definitely let us in. And a young woman standing in front of us was also kicked out of the line that time because her dress was an inch above her knee. So just be aware that they are going to be very strict about the clothing if you are trying to go into the church. It will save you so much time instead of waiting in line for like 30 minutes just to get to the front and be turned away. And of course, some other really quick, easy sites to see were the Rialto Bridge, as well as a bookstore called Libreria Acqua Alta. And this bookstore floods and goes underwater every fall when Venice receives heavy rains. And so most of the books in this bookstore are in boats. A lot of them resemble the gondolas, but the whole idea is that this protects them when the store inevitably floods every single year, and none of the books will get ruined. They also have a really cool book staircase built outside, which was fun. So as a librarian, if I can get anywhere that's got books, a library, a bookstore, and it's got a cool little theme to it, I'm gonna be there. The one thing that I was slightly disappointed about, though, was that I had read or heard somewhere that there were cats that hang out in this bookstore. And I was so excited because I was like, going to a bookstore in Italy and there's cats hanging out in there? Hell yeah. I walked in, no cats. I looked everywhere. I was like, where are the cats? Not a single cat in sight. So I don't know what that was about. I don't know if it was not the right season, but there were none. So if you're going there very excited about seeing the cats, there's a chance they might not be there. Let me know if you've been there and you've seen cats, or if I'm getting it entirely wrong and it's a different place in Venice that has cats. I'll be very sad that I missed it. But that was it. I did see one cat in an alleyway in Venice, but he immediately stalked off. He wanted nothing to do with me. And what I thought was really fun about Venice is that it's mostly comprised of all of these alleyways, and there are just so many different shops and restaurants just tucked away down all these different corners. And it feels like a maze almost, like you're the little mouse in the little maze trying to find the cheese. That's how it felt walking through these alleyways in Venice. It was a little disorienting at times when we were trying to get out and everything started to kind of look the same, but it was also very, very cool. It felt like I was in another country when I was walking these little streets. It was so much fun. And when we had dinner in Venice, we were dining al fresco. And so we were at this cute little place outside having some more delicious pasta. And then this accordion player came up and started serenading us while we ate. And I just thought it was so great because it was just everything I'd ever pictured about Italy, just dining on this delicious food and wine and just having an Italian accordion player singing Che sarà sarà to me. It was a dream. Che sarà sarà. Italy. And after a couple days in Venice, it was time to head down to our third and final city on this Italy trip, which was Florence. And let me just say, I think Florence ended up being my favorite part of the whole trip. Even though it's so hard to really choose, I feel like what we were doing in Florence was my absolute favorite memories of this entire trip, because we decided to book a day trip out to the Tuscan countryside. And this was a very full, eventful day, but we did so many incredible things. We basically got on this coach bus and we had a guide taking us for the whole day through 3 different smaller Tuscan towns. So we went to Siena, San Gimignano, and Pisa. Siena was first, and we got to meet a local guide there who took us through this town and was telling us all about the history of it. And we got to tour inside Siena Cathedral, which was very beautiful. Like literally everything from the floor to the ceiling had incredible artwork. Like I have to say, just like all the churches in Italy just blew me away. They all had their own distinct, unique styles, and all of them were nothing like anything I've seen in the US. So that was very, very neat. And San Gimignano was very cool to me because it's a pre-medieval town. And so you're walking through it and everything's very open. It's just like a lot of like rough stone. You didn't even look at the wall of skulls, Elena.
Oh my God.
And my cousin and I ended up climbing this bell tower. We climbed a lot of bell towers on this Italy trip, by the way. Something I learned about myself is I love a good bell tower. Once we climbed to the top, we had the most beautiful views of the whole Tuscan countryside down below. And it looked exactly like what I envisioned Tuscany to look like. It was basically a postcard right in front of our eyes. And I truly felt like I had been transported to a fantasy land far, far away. Once we were done touring the first two towns, we got to do a really cool thing. We had a farm-to-table lunch out in a vineyard in the Tuscan countryside, and it was delicious. They had pasta, they had the breads, they had like 4 different types of wine that you can drink. Some were sweeter, some were drier. There was also limoncello. It was delicious. Also, what I really liked was that they accommodated a few dietary restrictions. So if you didn't eat meat, they were going to give you a vegetarian option. So just let you know that was an option. I will book the company and the specific tour that we did in the description of this video, so you can check it out yourself if you're interested. It was amazing, hands down. Everything was so great because we had our lovely lunch, as much as we could eat too, by the way. Like they kept coming around being like, do you want seconds? Do you want thirds? Are you sure you don't want more? We got more. It was absolutely amazing. Just like a pasta dream, truly. So we made it to the vineyard.
And we're wasted.
Elaine and I had 3,000 glasses of wine. And now we're out in our Tuscan countryside. It's very pretty.
Beautiful.
Like, what? What? I love it. Good food, good wine, good company. Is that an Olive Garden phrase?
Cheers.
Schlancha. And once we were done eating, we packed up back onto the bus and we headed to our final destination for the day, which was the town of Pisa. And I know that this is like the most cliched thing I could possibly do when touring through Italy, but you know what? I wanted to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa. You can buy tickets to go up inside of the Leaning Tower and just like a spiral staircase and get all the way up to the top. I chose not to do that because I felt like, well, one, I was already climbing to the top of so many buildings on this trip. I didn't need to do another at this point. But also, I feel like everyone knows what the Leaning Tower of Pisa looks like when you're standing on the outside. Like that's where all the cool, fun pictures are going to be, not so much if you're already inside the building. So that's basically what we did. We just like goofed around and took as many terrible cliched photos with the tower as we could. And it was kind of a surreal moment to like look around and see all the other tourists that were all doing the exact same pose. Like it was just so funny. It feels a bit like you're in like Disney World or something in that moment. It's like, is this real life? And I will say, I think going with the tour for this specific activity was the way to go because outside of the Leaning Tower, I didn't really feel like there was that much more to do in Pisa itself. It's a very small town and it's just got a few little shops, and it's pretty far out of the ways from like Florence city proper. So it's kind of a journey to get all the way out there when there's really only like one or two like main activities you would do out there. So this was really great because this tour just basically gave you like a great holistic view of Tuscany and the things in it, kind of like dropped you down in a place, picked you back up, drop you in the next one, get you out. Okay, cool, let's head back to Florence now. So we basically left at like 7:30 in the morning, and then we got back at like 7:30 at night. So it was like a full 12-hour day, but it was so wonderful. Like the bus was really comfortable as well. Like they were so accommodating, and it was just a really great way to get out of like the cities, because that's all we'd been doing up to this point, and just like get out into the countryside and breathe a little more fresh country air, you know? And on our second day in Florence after the big Tuscany Day Trip, we did something that I was also extremely excited about for this Italy trip, which was a pasta making class. So we got to go into the restaurant of a real Italian chef who owns his own place, and he taught us how to make 3 different types of pasta. So we made fettuccine bolognese with a ragu sauce, and we also made tortellini using ricotta as well as ravioli with ricotta. It was hands down the absolute best pasta I have had in my life. And I'm saying this as someone who had been like eating pasta throughout all of Italy up to this point. The pasta that I ate in this class was the absolute best pasta just of my entire life. And it was fascinating because the chef was showing us how to make everything step by step, and he was using all whole natural ingredients and only a few ingredients. And that was the really amazing part about the food just everywhere that I went in Italy, was how they make such amazing, delicious, satisfying food from such few whole ingredients. It's a very different way of approaching food as compared to how food is prepared here in the US. And I absolutely loved it. And then our next day in Florence was doing more of like the classic tourist things throughout there. We went to Piazza del Duomo, and there are a few different components to Piazza del Duomo. You've got the Santa Maria del Fiore Cathedral, as well as the Cupola del Brunelleschi, which is the dome. It's kind of like St. Peter's Basilica as the dome. There's also the Baptistery of St. John, Giotto's bell tower, and the Museo dell'Opera del Duomo. You can buy tickets for these. And you can decide if you just want like an individual ticket for something, or if you want like just a big all-encompassing group pass for all these different activities. So as a heads up, any package that includes the dome climbing is going to sell out like at least a week in advance. We just went like that day to buy tickets to the different buildings in the plaza, and they were like, oh, sorry, the dome is sold out for the next 7 days. Which was fine because we had already climbed the dome in St. Peter's Basilica. So, and we already had quite a bit of a climb ahead of us with Giotto's bell tower. So we did not get to climb the dome in the cathedral in Florence. But if that's something that you really want to do, definitely look into booking those tickets ahead of time because they're very sold out. And so the last like big activity we were doing for our time in Florence was the bell tower, and it was pretty intense. There are 414 steps in Giotto's bell tower, and unlike the dome at St. Peter's Basilica, there is no elevator that gets you like halfway up. You just have to keep climbing these stairs, and then you get to a landing and you think you've made it to the top, and then you see there's like a little doorway on the side that's more stairs going up. So you take more stairs up and you get to another landing. You're like, this has to be it. We have to be here now. And then there's not. There's more stairs. And then there's also Mercato, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, Mercato Centrale Firenze, which is basically like a big market space. There are so many different places inside of this like big warehouse building to buy food, and then there's also like street vendors down below that are selling a whole bunch of like Italian leather goods and jewelries and everything. So we did eat inside there one of the times, and it was very good and relatively cheap as well. And Piazzale del Michaelangelo is a spot that has a really pretty scenic overlook of like all of Florence down below. If that's something you're really into, I would recommend it. It is a little bit of a hike up like this road that cars also drive on, so you just have to be aware of your surroundings as you're making the trek up. But once you're there, it is very pretty out there. And our time in Florence very quickly came to an end, and it was time to head back home from there. And it was an absolutely incredible trip. I cannot wait to go back. I'm definitely planning to do like a southern half of Italy trip at some point, possibly even also get to see Sicily. Now, here are some travel tips that I picked up while heading through Italy. First up, high-speed rail is the way to go, especially if you're going to be doing northern half of Italy. I know a lot of people will drive if they are going through the southern half, but it's really not necessary to get around to the different major cities in the northern half. Like, it's so easy. It's also incredibly cheap if you book the tickets several months in advance. They have what are called like super freccia days, I think that's what they were called, where the fare is like even cheaper, and it's just like a limited number of extra cheap tickets that are only available right when the tickets first go on sale. So that was how my cousin and I were able to score really cheap long distance train routes. It was a fantastic time. Also, another thing to keep in mind, and I know this is very common throughout a lot of different European countries, but this wasn't something that I experienced in Ireland. So in Italy, you need to pay to use the public bathrooms, and most of them are going to cost €1, and it's very handy to have like actual money on hand, like actual change. Also, water is not free in Italy. If you're going to go to a restaurant and you ask for water, just expect, one, they're going to charge you, and two, sparkling water is the default out there, not flat. So you have to specifically say flat water if you're just trying to get regular plain old water, and they do charge you. There's no like public like water fountain like you would see here in the US. There's more like these like very old looking like troughs almost, and there'll be spigots where water's just pouring out of them, and it doesn't look like you would drink from it, but I saw many people drinking from those and like refilling their water bottles. So those are free. Also, if you're going to eat in a restaurant, there's a specific order in which you would order the courses of your meal. If you're trying to order dessert first before your meal, or just have dessert, that's not going to fly. I have a whole other story about getting kicked out of a restaurant my very last night in Italy. So that could be a fun story time video for another time. And most of the time, whatever you're thinking, like Italian dishes here in the US are, those don't exist in Italy. Like there's no like chicken parmesan. It's most of the time you have to order meat as an entirely separate dish from the pasta. And on the subject of food, breakfast is carb central, man. Italians love their pastries and their croissants. There's not really going to be like bacon and eggs pancakes and waffles type of situation going on out there, omelets. It's really just a lot of baked goods for breakfast. If that's something you're really into, then that's going to be an awesome time. If you can't handle gluten, it's probably going to be a little rough. We stayed in a bed and breakfast place in Rome, and they served us breakfast every morning, but it was like the pastries. You got like multiple. We even got like focaccia bread as part of our breakfast. So just Italians love their carbs. Okay, so that concludes the travel vlog for Italy, aka country number 2 on my list of 10 countries in 10 years. So I hope that this video was helpful for you. I hope that I was able to give you some insight into things to do. I will be linking all of the places that we stayed in Italy in the description down below as well if you want any tips on that. And feel free to also follow my Instagram. It's Caitlin Travels 101. I am sharing all the content I can possibly mine up from all the different trips I have been taking over these last several years. So thank you so much for watching. Please leave any tips you have for Italy travel and places that you think people should visit down in the comments down below. And I will see you in my next video. Bye.